The lights went out, the heat died, and my parents screamed my name because I finally stopped paying their bills. Hi, I'm Joelle, the girl who got kicked out on her 30th birthday by the same people I kept afloat for years. They faked illnesses, drained my savings, and laughed while I quietly broke behind closed doors. But when I walked away, I took every single receipt with me. Have you ever had to choose between family and survival? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Now let me take you back to the night it all fell apart. You're too old to freeload. Royce Granger didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words hung in the air like smoke, thin, bitter, and impossible to ignore. It took me a second to realize he was serious. I sat at the dining table across from him, a fork halfway to my mouth, hovering above a lumpy pile of instant mashed potatoes. Canned green beans pooled in pale water on the side of the plate. Meatloaf with that familiar dry crust sat center stage, same as every Wednesday for the past decade. Nothing about the meal screamed birthday, but then again, nothing in this house had screamed family for a long time either. "Excuse me?" I said finally. Royce didn't look up. He kept his eyes on his plate, stabbing a piece of meatloaf like it owed him money. "You heard me?" he said. "You're 30 now. It's time you moved on." From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother, Denise, pause. She didn't look up either. She just shifted in her chair, adjusted her fork, and started slicing her beans into even smaller pieces. "It's my birthday," I said flatly. Royce shrugged. "Yeah, that's kind of the point." The silence that followed wasn't thick or dramatic. It was cold, mechanical. The hum of the refrigerator, the buzz of the ceiling light, the artificial laughter of a sitcom on the living room TV just loud enough to bleed into the kitchen. And just as he repeated the word freeload, the TV delivered a perfectly timed laugh track. Cruel, hollow, cinematic. "I've been paying the utility bills," I said quietly. "The internet, the car insurance, groceries, half the mortgage." Royce scoffed, finally looking at me. "Paying a few bills doesn't give you squat, princess." Princess. He hadn't called me that since I was 5 and tripped on the front porch. He scooped me up and told me I was tougher than any princess in a movie. Now, it felt like a punchline. Denise took a sip of her wine, still refusing to lift her eyes. A tiny twitch in her jaw betrayed her discomfort, but she said nothing. She never did. "I work full-time," I said, slower now, measuring each word. "I clean this house. I take care of the groceries. I fix things when they break." Royce didn't flinch. "Yeah, and you get to live here rent-free." "Rent-free?" I almost laughed. "I paid for the roof repair last winter. And we appreciated it. Number you didn't." He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "So what now? You gonna throw all your good deeds in our face? On your birthday?" There it was. The trap. The guilt grenade he always lobbed when I pushed back. The implication that I owed them my silence, my money, my very breath, because they'd raised me. Denise finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't angry or sad. They were empty, checked out. Like this conversation was background noise she'd learned to ignore. I stood up. The chair screeched across the linoleum like a protest. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. The birthday cake I bought for myself, one of those sad grocery store rectangles with a crooked "Happy Birthday, Joelle" written in red frosting, sat untouched on the counter. It looked ridiculous now. Juvenile. Pathetic. I didn't say anything more. What was left to say? I walked upstairs, one step at a time, each footfall echoing louder than the last. Halfway up, I heard Royce mutter something, and Denise give a soft laugh. My stomach turned. In my room, the air felt tighter. I looked around, at the dresser I'd painted, the curtains I'd sewn, The rug I'd bought with my own money. None of it mattered. This room had never truly belonged to me. It had been a convenience, a utility. I opened the closet and dragged out my suitcase. It was already half packed. I'd been pretending I was organizing, but really I'd known. I'd felt it coming. Maybe not tonight, but someday soon. And someday was now. On the nightstand sat a framed photo from my 12th birthday, me in the middle, with Royce and Denise on either side. Their smiles were wide and practiced. Mine? Hopeful. Eyes raised toward people I thought I'd meant something to. I turned the frame over and slid it into the bottom of my suitcase, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I needed the reminder. I folded my clothes mechanically. My body moved on autopilot, but my mind started pulling strings. The surgery Royce couldn't afford when he cracked a molar. I'd paid that bill in cash. The snowstorm that stranded Denise outside town. I'd missed work and bought her 4 new tires. Even paid the tow truck driver in full. The leaking roof. I'd patched it myself, on a ladder, in the rain, while Royce barked about lazy contractors from his recliner. I remembered it all. Every cent. Every sacrifice. Not once had they said thank you. Not once had they offered me a seat at the table. And tonight, they'd officially declared I wasn't even welcome in the house I'd helped keep afloat. My fingers found my laptop. The glow of the screen lit the room in a sterile blue. I sat down, breathed deep, and began. Electricity, cancel autopay. Water, remove card. Internet, disconnect scheduled. Car insurance, vehicles removed. I paused at the joint bank account. Denise had insisted we keep it for emergencies. I'd always suspected she dipped into it when the wine ran low or the credit cards ran high. I transferred the balance into my personal account and froze the shared one. Each click felt like cutting a cord. Not out of rage, not even hurt anymore. Just finality. My eyes caught the cake again, still sealed in its plastic box. I picked it up, turned it once in my hands, then dropped it. It landed face down, frosting smearing like a wound across the carpet. The power hadn't shut off yet, but it would. By morning, this house would go dark. Denise's online orders would bounce. The sitcom would go silent. And Royce? He'd finally feel what it was like to flip a switch and find nothing on the other side. I shut the laptop. The hum of the screen faded. Downstairs, the laugh track rolled on. Tomorrow, I'll be gone. The Wi-Fi's dead. What now? Royce slammed the remote down, the sitcom cutting off in the darkness. Royce's voice sliced through the half-lit living room like a dull axe. He slapped the remote against his palm, harder this time, as the TV screen blinked black and stayed that way. The sitcom they'd been binging every night for the past 5 years had suddenly gone silent. No punchline, no laugh track. Just the sound of the house breathing in the dark. From the kitchen, Denise called out. Maybe the modem glitched again. Her voice was thin, uncertain. She stood at the counter in her robe, scrolling her phone with increasing desperation. No service, no signal, no clue. Royce marched over to the router box, bent down, yanked the cord out, and slammed it back in. Nothing. A red, blinking light stared back at him like an accusation. Goddamn thing's busted, he muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. They didn't know it yet, but this wasn't a glitch. This was a decision. Upstairs, the room I'd been sleeping in my whole adult life now sat empty, stripped of my presence and power alike. In a quiet corner of Lexi's apartment across town, I sipped chamomile tea and watched the sunrise graze the rooftops like a blessing. My phone lay face down on the table. I hadn't turned it on since the night I walked away. But that house, my old house, was beginning to feel it. The heater clicked off an hour ago and didn't click back. The refrigerator light went dark. The microwave buttons lost their signature beep. Royce fumbled through the junk drawer for a flashlight, yelling curses into the air like they could fix something. Denise, still trying to check her bank app, retyped her password for the third time. "It says the account's frozen," she mumbled. "Why would it be frozen?" I could almost see her brows furrowing, lips pursed in confusion and rising panic. She reached into her purse, grabbed her backup card, an old debit linked to her retirement savings, and tried again. Declined. She didn't understand it yet, but that account was frozen too. She just didn't know how deep I'd cut yet. Royce tried to make a call, pacing the room with the cordless pressed to his ear. No dial tone. "Damn it, Denise. What did you pay this month?" "Anything?" he barked. "I thought Joelle set it up on auto again." "Jesus Christ!" he snapped, throwing the remote across the room. It struck the wall and fell with a hollow clunk. "You let her handle everything, and now look." Denise tried calling me, of course. I watched the call flash across my screen, once, twice, 5 times. I didn't answer. Her voicemail came in 2 minutes later. "Honey, I think something's wrong with the bank. Call me back, please. We can talk." But there was nothing left to talk about. I had spent years propping up that household like scaffolding around a building already condemned. I paid the bills. I ran the errands. I kept the heat on while Royce bragged about raising a daughter with grit. All while he sank into his recliner every night with cheap whiskey and cheaper opinions. And now? They were finally going to feel what it meant to be without me. Back in that dimming house, Denise pulled open her wallet. The emergency visa still declined. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached into her nightstand for her old retirement card. She hadn't touched it in months, assuming I'd always be there to buffer reality. Denied. Have you ever realized that someone only kept you around because you were useful, not because you were loved? That cold moment when support is expected but care is never returned. If you've been there, drop a comment with the number 7. Now let's see what happened next. Royce cursed again. His stomach growled audibly. "I'm going to the gas station," he announced. "We're out of bread, or milk, or whatever." 15 minutes later, he stood at the register with a loaf of bread, 2 frozen burritos, and a bottle of off-brand cola. The teenage cashier scanned the items and waited. Royce handed over the same card he'd used for years, the one I'd linked to the shared grocery account. Declined. He tried again. And again. The teen raised an eyebrow. "You want to just put something back?" she offered. Royce's jaw clenched. "Number. It's fine." He pulled out a crumpled 5 from his wallet and tossed the burritos aside. "Just the bread." Outside, in the car, he slammed the door so hard it echoed across the empty parking lot. Back at Lexi's place, I scrolled through the confirmation emails one last time. Utility disconnect, complete. Internet account, closed. Insurance, vehicles removed, joint bank. Frozen. I felt no guilt. Only a kind of quiet clarity, the kind that settles after you stop trying to fix what was never yours to fix. The sun had risen fully now, casting warm gold across the hardwood floor. In the distance, I heard the sound of kids laughing as they walked to school. Life moved forward. So did I. Another call buzzed in. I ignored it. Then came the message. A single line, sharp as glass. "You'll regret this. We raised you." I stared at the screen, then set it down without replying. "No," I thought. "You didn't raise me. I raised myself." Some daughters are born grateful. Some turn into snakes. Royce's Facebook post. That was the opening line, plastered across the town's community Facebook page, attached to a blurry photo of Royce sitting on the front porch in his bathrobe, a plaid blanket draped across his legs like a war veteran from a cheap soap opera. He'd posted it at dawn. 6 likes in the first minute. 11 more by the time I saw it. The caption continued, After everything we gave her, she left us cold, broke, and sick. We don't even have electricity. If you believe in family, pray for us. And if you see Joelle, remind her what real loyalty looks like. The comment section lit up like wildfire. Half were heart emojis and "You're in our prayers" from people who hadn't spoken to us since 2009. The rest? The rest made my stomach clench. What kind of daughter abandons sick parents? This generation is broken. Royce was always such a proud father. This must be killing him. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I sat in Lexi's kitchen staring at the screen and let the sting work its way down to something harder, colder. Lexi walked in mid-sip of her coffee. "You saw it." I nodded. She leaned over my shoulder, squinted, and muttered, "What a theatrical bastard." She wasn't wrong. It wasn't just the post. It was the manipulation. The precise way he phrased things, dodging any direct accusation, all innuendo and implication. And the photo? From last winter. I remembered because I'd been the one who bought that damn blanket when he complained the old one itched. I closed the app. Denise had already started her part. Missed calls from her phone. A voicemail laced with sniffles and a weak, "I didn't know he'd post that, honey. We're just scared. Everything's so hard now." She always did this. Played neutral until someone else became the villain, then slipped into the soft, wounded mother who just wanted to make peace. But I remembered too well the time I fixed her car, spent 3 hours on a freezing driveway, and she told me, "Don't mention it to your uncle. Let your father take the credit. He needs to feel useful." Useful. That was what I'd been for them. Not a daughter, not a person, a utility, an extension cord they assumed would always carry current. But not anymore. I opened my laptop, searched my inbox, my bank app, my cloud backups. Every receipt I'd kept out of habit, every email confirmation, every screenshot. My fingers moved fast, with precision born from years of being the household's invisible administrator. $427.89 for Royce's dental surgery, $316.22 for Denise's tires, $98 monthly internet bill, recurring, $2,500 wire transfer to cover the mortgage in April, $150 emergency tow service last Christmas. I didn't need to prove anything to them. But I needed to remind the town of the truth before the lies rooted too deep. Lexi looked over. "Need help?" I tilted the screen toward her. "I'm building a digital slap in the face. Want to make it pretty?" She grinned. "Thought you'd never ask." Together, we crafted the post. Not bitter, not angry, just factual. "Hi, neighbors. Since my name's being mentioned in vague terms, I wanted to clarify a few things. Below are the receipts for every major expense I've covered for my parents over the past 5 years: utilities, repairs, medical, and mortgage. I've also included email confirmations where applicable. I moved out recently by their request. I did not abandon them. I withdrew my support when I was told I was no longer welcome in the house I paid to keep running. I'm not asking for sympathy, just clarity. Because truth matters, especially in small towns." We hit post. Then we waited. The first 10 minutes were quiet. Then came the wave. "Wait, she was paying the mortgage? I saw her on that roof with a hammer last spring. Thought they hired someone. Denise told me Joelle didn't work, that she was just living off them. She's got bank receipts. That's not bitterness. That's facts." And then, gold. A comment from Rita Donnelly, our neighbor 3 doors down. "I saw Royce last week carrying a case of beer into the house, laughing his head off with 2 buddies. Didn't look sick to me." Within an hour, someone else dropped a short video clip. Royce at the local liquor store parking lot, hoisting a 24-pack into his trunk, talking loudly on speakerphone about how she finally cracked. Time-stamped, 3 days ago. Boom. Lexi nearly spit her coffee. He faked being ill and forgot the cameras exist? Royce doesn't understand the internet exists. Comments began to flip. The pity curdled into suspicion, then derision. I sat back and watched it unfold, not with glee, but with something sharper. Validation. Years of being called dramatic, ungrateful, over-emotional, undone by digital proof, and a man too arrogant to cover his own tracks. And then it came. A private message. No profile photo, no name, just text. They'll fake a heart attack next. Watch. I stared at the screen. A slow exhale left my lungs. Lexi leaned over. Creepy? I shook my head. Not creepy, just inevitable. The envelope slipped from my hands. I picked it up and read the words, financial neglect, elder abuse. For a few seconds, I just stood there in the hallway of Lexi's apartment, the world suddenly muffled like I was underwater. The letter was real. Thick beige cardstock, official header, stapled packet of accusations printed in 12-point Times New Roman. Royce and Denise Granger had filed a civil suit against me for abandonment, financial exploitation, and emotional harm. I let out a slow breath. No panic, just a heavy, slow-spreading disbelief. Then, like pulling teeth, I opened the packet and started reading. Every accusation was a twisted version of the truth. She stole from our accounts. She manipulated us into depending on her, then withdrew support without warning. We are elderly, ill, and financially immobile. The most ironic line of all? Joelle Granger is dangerous when crossed. Somewhere in the back of my mind, Royce's voice echoed from months ago, smug and cruel. You'll never have the guts to fight us. We're still your blood. Blood. As if that was a shield. As if genetics excused abuse. I picked up the phone and dialed the number Lexi had slipped me last week. Just in case, she'd said. A lawyer named Hallis. Sharp. Expensive. Worth every cent. He picked up on the third ring. Calm. Collected. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd dismantled dozens of petty lawsuits with surgical precision. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from him in his corner office downtown, the subpoena spread between us. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled warm afternoon light across the glass table. My hand stayed still as I walked him through everything. Dates, names, receipts, screenshots. He didn't interrupt, just nodded and took notes. They're weaponizing the fact that they're your parents, Hallis said flatly, and hoping no one will ask why their daughter left after financing them for years. He slid a yellow legal pad toward me. Let's go on offense. Over the next few days, I turned over everything. Bank statements, texts, photos, invoices. Hallis and his assistant compiled it into a sleek, 43-page rebuttal. Royce, meanwhile, was busy launching a digital smear campaign. His Facebook was a daily parade of self-pity and passive-aggressive poison. Betrayal from within is the cruelest kind. We took her in when no one else would. This is how she thanks us. Denise played her part with voicemail after voicemail. Honey, I didn't know he was going to file anything. I just want peace. Your father's been coughing up blood again. Please call me. I didn't answer. What they didn't know was Hallis had already filed a formal counterclaim. Coerced financial dependency. Emotional manipulation. Pattern of economic control and exploitation. Alongside that, a proposal for pre-trial mediation. A chance for them to back off, quietly. They refused. So we scheduled a preliminary hearing. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and stale coffee. I wore navy. Clean lines, No jewelry, no visible emotion. Royce arrived in a wrinkled blazer and clutched a plastic bottle of water like it was a lifeline. Denise wore soft colors, a scarf tied around her neck like a Sunday widow. In her hand, a manila folder of printed medical records. We didn't speak. Inside the conference room, the table stretched like a battlefield. On my side, Hallis, calm and surgical. On theirs, a local lawyer I'd never seen before, already sweating through his collar. Royce opened the show with dramatics. "This has torn our family apart," he said, voice shaking on cue. "We just wanted Joelle to talk to us. Instead, she comes back at us with threats." Hallis didn't flinch. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "if Mr. Granger truly desired conversation, he wouldn't have filed legal action as a first step." He laid out Exhibit A, $11,842 in documented transfers from my account to theirs over 18 months. Exhibit B, screenshots of voicemails from Denise laced with passive threats. Exhibit C, an itemized repair bill for their home, all paid from my bank. Royce's face turned red. Denise fake coughed once, then dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Then Hallis dropped the final document, a forensic review of the medical PDF Denise had submitted. Half the dates were formatted inconsistently. Several pages had been edited post-scan. Forgery. The room fell silent. Royce slammed his hand on the table, rattling a cup of water. "This is a witch hunt," he barked. "She's manipulating everyone." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Granger, one more outburst and we'll pause these proceedings." Denise swayed slightly in her seat. Her scarf loosened. She let out a small gasp and slumped sideways. "Mom," I heard myself say. Not out of concern, out of disbelief. Hallis didn't even blink. "Ms. Granger, we're not disputing their right to feel hurt. But feelings don't justify fraud." Outside, the air smelled like gasoline and mulch. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing slowly, as Royce shouted at Denise for overplaying it. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just stood there, letting the wind carry away the last scraps of whatever guilt still lingered. 2 hours later, Hallis called. His voice was calm. "The court accepted our motion to investigate them for defamation and potential financial abuse. Local PD has been informed. You'll likely hear from them soon." I thanked him. Then I opened my phone. A new voicemail. "This has gone too far, Joelle. You're tearing this family apart." And then, 15 minutes later, "You'll regret this. You're not the only one who knows how to fight dirty." I stared at the screen. Just one thought crossed my mind. Go ahead. Try me. Have you ever reached a point where fear turns into fire, when you're done apologizing for saving yourself and ready to fight back? If you've ever had to stand alone against the people who should have stood with you, drop a 9 below. Now, let's see how this battle ends. "We gave you life!" Royce bellowed across the courtroom. "And I rebuilt mine without you," I answered, voice steady, unshaken. The words cracked through the space like a gunshot. For a brief second, even the fluorescent lights seemed to hold their breath. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a reckoning. I stood in the small town's public courtroom, dark wood paneling, peeling seal of the county court hung behind the judge, a room that had likely seen more noise complaints than civil suits. But today, it was full. Residents, reporters, 2 local news crews with handheld cams. Everyone is hungry for a show. Royce and Denise sat across from me, flanked by their attorney, who now looked like he regretted ever taking their case. Royce's jaw flexed. Denise dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that hadn't caught a single tear. And in my bag, zipped into an inner pocket, was the cake topper from my 30th birthday. Still sticky with dried frosting, still sharp with memory. They wanted a battle. They were about to lose a war. The judge cleared her throat. Ms. Granger, you may proceed. Hallis stood beside me. Calm, suit crisp, tie navy. He slid the first folder forward. We're submitting Exhibits F through J, video and audio evidence. The screen behind us lit up. Static. Then grainy footage from my former home's hallway. Footage from the indoor security camera I'd installed the year before, when Denise claimed someone had tried to break in. They'd forgotten it still backed up to the cloud. There they were, 2 days before the lawsuit. Royce standing tall, beer in hand, laughing. Let's hit her with the elder abuse thing. That'll scare her. Denise on the couch, smirking. She's too soft to go to court, she'll cave. She always caves. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The next clip? Royce reading from the drafted post he'd later upload to Facebook. Rehearsing. Word for word. Some daughters are born grateful. Dead silence. Royce jumped to his feet. That footage is stolen. Judge Harper raised a single brow. It's from her account. Your home, but her equipment, her subscription, her name on the storage. Sit down, Mr. Granger. He did. Slowly, face reddening by the second. Denise shifted in her seat, then leaned toward the microphone. That video is taken out of context. We were frustrated. Frustrated? Hallis repeated. Enough to fabricate medical records? Enough to falsely accuse your daughter of neglect? Enough to mobilize social media in a smear campaign? The crowd stirred again. I saw familiar faces. Mrs. Langley from the grocery store, Mr. Boone from my old high school, even Riley, the woman who used to babysit me after school. All of them watching, listening, processing. Then came the third clip. A voicemail from Denise, 3 days after the lawsuit was filed. Voice trembling, sweet as syrup. Joelle, if you just drop this whole legal mess, we can go back to how things were. We'll say it was a misunderstanding. You don't want to break this family apart over something so small, do you? Hallis muted the audio, then turned to the judge. Your Honor, we're not just dealing with a baseless civil complaint. We're looking at sustained coercion, public defamation, and coordinated emotional manipulation. Denise folded in on herself. Royce didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. Judge Harper exhaled. I've heard enough. She straightened a stack of documents, tapped them into place. The court finds no merit in the plaintiff's claims. This case is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, Mr. and Mrs. Granger are hereby issued a formal warning. Any further false claims may result in criminal charges under the state's defamation statutes. There was no gavel slam, no dramatic music, just the scratch of her pen on paper and the soft intake of breath from everyone in the room. Royce stood abruptly. This isn't over. No, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But you are. Denise tried to stand too quickly, wobbled, and sank back into her chair. Her face had gone pale. The scarf around her neck sagged like a wilted flag. I turned to leave, and as I passed the gallery, a hand gently touched my shoulder. It belonged to Mrs. Beaumont, the town librarian, a woman who once scolded me for returning a book 2 days late in 5th grade. You did the right thing, she whispered. We always knew something was off. We just didn't have proof. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Outside the sun was blinding, not in a painful way, in a cleansing way. I paused on the steps, letting it hit my skin, my scalp, my chest. Royce and Denise exited through the side door, heads down. They didn't look back. I didn't expect them to. That night, back at Lexi's, I opened the mailbox. A plain white envelope. No return address. Inside, a small note, handwritten. I always knew. You just gave us the courage to say it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. No voices, no guilt. Just me. I opened the door to my new apartment and stepped into the light. It was nothing fancy. The floors creaked. The windows needed caulking, and the kitchen sink had a stubborn drip I'd need to fix eventually. But the walls were mine. The air was mine. And most of all, the silence was mine. No shouting. No guilt-laced sighs. No sitcom laugh tracks covering up tension like cheap wallpaper. Just golden afternoon sunlight spilling across bare hardwood, touching the walls like a quiet apology. I set the box down by the door, kicked it shut gently behind me, and took a deep breath. The air smelled of cardboard, paint, and possibility. The topper from my birthday cake sat in my bag, wrapped in an old scarf. I pulled it out, held it for a moment. Plastic, slightly cracked, still dusted with dried red frosting. For a long time, it symbolized pain. Now, it was proof of what I'd endured, of what I'd escaped. I placed it on the shelf above my small desk. Not like a trophy, more like a landmark. A reminder that healing doesn't always look like celebration. Sometimes it just looks like peace. I pulled open one of the smaller boxes I'd stacked in the corner, one I hadn't touched since moving out of the house. At the very bottom was a folded sheet of paper. I recognized the handwriting instantly. My own, childish and clumsy. "I'll always take care of Mommy and Daddy." It read in bright purple marker, stars drawn around the sentence. I stared at it for a long time before quietly walking over to the sink. I held it over the open flame of a candle Lexi had lit and let it burn, watching it curl and blacken and disappear. Lexi arrived 30 minutes later with a small chocolate cupcake and a crooked smile. "No more sad birthdays," she said, raising an eyebrow as she handed it to me. I laughed, genuinely, freely. "Only quiet ones." We sat on the floor and ate with plastic forks, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and 1,000 little beginnings. Later that evening, I watered the one plant I'd bought from the corner market. It had 2 leaves and one brave little bud just starting to unfurl. I whispered to it like it might understand. "Grow slow, but grow strong." There was a knock at the door just as I rinsed the watering can. I opened it to find a gray-haired woman holding a pair of pliers and a sheepish smile. "Sorry to bother you, dear. My sink's giving me trouble. You wouldn't happen to have a wrench?" "I might," I said, waving her in. She paused at the doorway, looked around, then said, "This place sat dark for months. I'm glad someone's finally brought life into it again." Something about the way she said it, gentle, sincere, hit me deeper than expected. I handed her the tool, and she left with a nod and a quiet, "Welcome home." Lexi snapped a candid photo of me standing at the window, bathed in that soft amber glow. I didn't pose. I didn't even turn. But when she showed it to me later, I didn't flinch. Because in that reflection, faint in the glass behind the plant, behind the sky, I didn't see the girl who used to flinch at door creaks or hesitate before speaking. I saw a woman who had survived and stayed soft anyway. An email buzzed on my phone, a job offer, remote work, flexible hours, a company that paid well and asked 0 personal questions. I replied with a simple, "Yes. Thank you for the opportunity." As I moved through the room, I noticed how everything echoed just slightly. The apartment wasn't full yet. It didn't have rugs or pictures or the smell of simmering soup, but it had space, and light, and me. That night, I opened my journal and wrote a letter. Not to Royce, not to Denise. To myself. If one day you forget why you walked away, come back to this page. You didn't leave out of hate. You left because you mattered. I folded the page and tucked it into the drawer beside my bed. Before I went to sleep, I checked the small mailbox downstairs. Nestled between a furniture catalog and a coupon sheet was a plain white envelope. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a note written in neat, looping handwriting. "You were never the problem." I read it twice. Then once more. I didn't try to guess who sent it. I didn't need to. It wasn't about them. It was about me, about what I had needed to hear, and finally, had said to myself. I placed the note beside the cake topper. 2 artifacts from the war I'd walked out of, not as a soldier, but as a survivor. That night, I lay in bed by the window, a breeze brushing the curtain gently. Somewhere in the city, a dog barked. Somewhere else, someone laughed. But here was peace. Sometimes, walking away from the people who raised you is the only way I could become the person I was meant to be. I didn't win by yelling louder or striking back. I won by telling the truth. And in doing that, I found something no one ever gave me freely. Peace. Family? It isn't about blood, it's about respect. Love? It's not about duty, it's about choice. I used to think I had to earn a seat at their table. Now I'm building one of my own, with honesty, boundaries, and people who see me, not just need me. If you've ever felt like you were too much, or not enough, maybe you'll find a piece of yourself in my story. Because here's what I know now, and what I want you to remember. You were never the problem. Have you ever had to walk away to save yourself? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if my journey meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because here, your story matters. Always.